Have you ever wondered when you go to Amazon or you go to a website looking for a microphone, you're like, what kind of microphone do I really need? Because there's so many different options out there. Well, so this is what this video is going to cover. I want to talk about the two basic types of microphones and what the advantages, disadvantages are for each, and what you really need to look for when you're going to try to buy one of these microphones. So I have a few different types here that I can show you, and hopefully this will kind of dispel any information or any misinformation that you may have gotten and help you gain a little bit more knowledge concerning microphones for your broadcast. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. All right, condenser versus dynamic. Let's talk about their main differences and what you need to look for. All right, first of all, what is a condenser? Well, a condenser microphone is just a microphone that requires power to be applied to it. And when you apply this power to it, which they call it 48 volt phantom power in your audio interface or a mixer that you have, or if you have a USB microphone, then it's powered through USB. But regardless, they all use this power to amplify the diaphragm. That diaphragm then picks up your signal that is amplified and sent out as a high level mic output. For diaphragms, there is no power applied. The only electrical signal that it comes out of the microphone is generated from a magnet that gets its signal from a diaphragm, and the intensity of that signal totally depends on your volume level and how loudly you speak into the microphone. So with that being said, there are some great advantages and disadvantages for each of these types. First of all, both of them still require amplification of the signal, but dynamics will typically need considerably more. So if you're turning up your gain on your interface or your mixer, you will definitely need a lot more gain as compared to a condenser microphone. USB condensers often have everything that you actually need built into the microphone, as opposed to a XLR condenser where you still need an audio interface or a mixer to get its power and for the signal to be processed. And then some of the mics that I have here, this is a Samsung Q2U. This is a dynamic USB and XLR dual microphone. There's a few of these out there. Audio Technica makes one. This Samsung one are very similar in price and design, but this is a neat option for a dynamic microphone. This is a USB condenser microphone, a Fifine K678. This has pretty much everything that you would want on a microphone built in right here in controls. This is a condenser microphone, but it's XLR, so you need an interface or a mixer for this to work. This is my favorite microphone that I'm currently using, and this is a Rode Pod mic. This is a dynamic XLR microphone. Again, very simple in design. There's no buttons. It's basically you plug this up into an audio interface or mixer, and whatever sound you put into it comes out of it at a low input. This one is a little different. Even though this is a dynamic, this still has preamp built into it because this does digital audio conversion, and you have gain control built into the microphone here. So this one is a little different, but it is still a dynamic microphone. At the front end of this microphone, it still operates like a dynamic microphone, but because it is a USB microphone, the amplification and everything still happens in this. All right, so let's talk about some advantages and disadvantages to dynamics versus condensers. Dynamic microphones, they have superior background rejection. That's why you see a lot of broadcasters use dynamic microphones, like Joe Rogan, for instance. If you watch his podcast, or Tim Pool, they all use like Shure SM7Bs, which are really good dynamic microphones, really warm sound, but they're fantastic at background rejection. So if you have somebody else in your room with you, you can still talk into this microphone and it will not pick up the other person's voice. Likewise, if you're in a room with a lot of noise, dynamic microphones will really be beneficial because of that background rejection. All right, another great thing about the microphones, and if you ever picked up a Rode pod mic, is their durability. This thing right here weighs over 2 pounds. You could drop this thing 100 times and I guarantee you it will still work. They're just durable. They're very simple in design, and typically they're just better for doing to going on trips and stuff like that. They can handle the travel. They can handle being dropped. So that's why you generally see, like these microphones here, where they're just wired microphones or whatever. Like the Shure SM58, for instance, is a very popular microphone. It's very similar in look here for a live mic. You could drop those things, and the worst that will happen to them is they might get a little scuff or might get a dent on the cage here. Condenser, on the other hand, if you drop it, well, then you're very likely to break it. Usually the dynamic microphones are usually less expensive when compared to comparable condensers, with some exceptions, of course. And then dynamics, because they're a low level mic output, they can actually handle louder sounds, higher SPL sounds, like drums, for instance. If you have a drum mic in your kick, for instance, or a drum mic on your snare, those really loud sounds, those microphones are dynamic microphones, and they're cardioid or super cardioid in some cases, that can just handle those high SPL sounds without clipping and without distorting. Another thing that's really good with dynamic microphones is they're better for vocals that have a lot of sibilance. So sibilance being, how you sound out your S's. If you really have a strong sibilance, dynamic microphones will actually help out with that because they have less detail in the higher end. Now, some of their disadvantages. Sometimes, depending on the microphone, and this pod mic here is included in that, the Shure SM7B, you may need additional boost if your preamps are not good enough to handle the microphone. Budget preamps typically put out about 50 to 56 dB of gain on a mic, whereas these microphones really require more than that. I have to max out my gain on my preamp for my pod mic, and that introduces noise from the preamp, which you generally don't want. So you might need to get a gain booster. Now, I have this gain booster here. This is an inline gain booster that I use, that I basically plug right into the back of the mic like that, and then I plug the XLR cable into there. Then I can turn on phantom power, and that gives me another 26 dB of gain that I can use for this microphone, and it helps out a lot, trust me. Now, generally speaking, with the exception of like the Q2U, which is USB, you will need an audio interface or a mixer to use a dynamic microphone. That's just their XLR microphones. That's what you're required to have. So that adds additional cost to your microphone. The good thing is with dynamic microphones is they're generally cheaper than condenser microphones, so you may be able to afford an audio interface or a mixer into your budget. All right, so let's now talk about condensers. So, advantages of a condenser microphone. So, generally speaking, these microphones here have better overall sound, again, because of their detail in the higher frequency spectrum. They're just brighter sounding, they're more natural sounding, really good microphones for vocals. Now, for streamers especially, and this is really what this channel's geared to, streamers, there are tons of microphones out there, marketed USB, low cost, what I would consider low cost, under $100 USB microphones, such as this one here, that sound really great. And it doesn't require an interface or a mixer. You just plug it into your into Windows, into your computer or your Mac. And generally speaking, you don't even need drivers. They're plug and play, they install. The great thing about these types of microphones is they have everything pretty much built into them. For instance, this Fifine K678 has a mute button. It has mic gain that you can control right here on the microphone, and it has volume where you can plug your headphones into the bottom of this microphone and you get zero latency monitoring of your mic and you also get playback audio from your PC, which is really good. That's why these microphones are very popular, because they don't require a whole bunch of other equipment to use them. And this microphone in particular does sound really good. Now, one of the things that is good for a condenser compared to a dynamic, which I did not mention, is that generally speaking, if you're someone that moves around a lot, you know, if you're moving your head a lot in your mic and you're not talking directly into the mic, condensers are a lot more forgiving. Because they're so much more sensitive, you can kind of back off the mic a little bit, move around and do that sort of thing, and it'll still pick up your voice pretty good compared to a dynamic where you have to be pretty much on this mic the whole time, and if you veer off to the right like that, you're going to have a lot of signal loss. So it's very important, and that's why condenser microphones work really well for a lot of situations. All right, disadvantages of condenser microphones. First of all, they are unforgiving to room noise. So for streamers that have a lot of PCs around there where their fans are blowing, if you have mechanical keyboards and you're doing a lot of typing, or you're playing a game that requires a lot of keystrokes, a lot of mouse clicks, that's something you really need to think about for a condenser, because they pick up so much. They're just not that good at rejecting background noise. So keep that in mind. Although they've gotten better over the years, they are not as durable as a dynamic microphone. They can be quite fragile. So if you drop one, there is a good chance that you could possibly break it. So that's something you need to think about. And generally speaking, condensers are more expensive because they require more, parts to make, basically, is really what it comes down to. Also, if you, like I had mentioned before with dynamics, if you have a lot of semblance in your voices, you need to consider how you're going to handle a condenser microphone, because those will really amplify semblance at the higher frequency spectrum. It'll really stand out. And then, of course, like I said, all condensers require power, so XLR versions of condenser microphones will require that audio interface with 48 volt phantom power. Now, I don't know of a lot of audio interfaces out there that don't come with 48 volt phantom power, but just make sure, if you are going to buy one, just make sure and verify that it has phantom power with it. All right, now, what I would like to do is I'd like to do a sound comparison between my two favorite microphones. Right now, the Rode Pod mic, this is that dynamic XLR microphone. This is a USB condenser microphone, the Fifine K678. Both are around the same price range. This one goes for about $99 online, and this one goes for $89 right now on Amazon. So we'll do some comparisons in sound between the two, and then I'll kind of show you some things about how they handle moving around the microphone and how they reject background noise, and we'll do various things, and then I'll close this up with some things that you need to consider. So here is my Rode Pod mic. This is a dynamic cardioid XLR microphone. Currently what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to achieve about a -20 to -18 decibels in OBS. So that is right where the green and yellow meet. That should be, generally speaking, where you try to target your microphones. That gives you a little bit of headroom in the event that you get really loud and your microphone goes up and down. Now, currently this is raw input. There is no processing, no compression whatsoever. So you will see the microphone fluctuate, the signal fluctuate a lot, which is very important with this. This is one of the things I want to show you with the dynamic. Now, I'm very close to this microphone. I'm literally maybe an inch or two away from the diaphragm, and I have this pop filter over the top of it. But I want you to listen to the sound with this microphone. Generally speaking, this is a great microphone for broadcasting for obvious reasons, background noise rejection, but it also has a very flat response. It sounds very good, considering the price of it at being $100. And with a little bit of processing, you can actually make it even sound better. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to do a few different tests just to give you an idea of what this microphone sounds like in various situations. First of all, I want to do a polar pattern test. Polar pattern is basically the sound field of the microphone and how it's shaped. And basically for most microphones, most broadcast microphones like this, you have a cardioid polar pattern, which means that it's heart-shaped. In the back, you have a lot of rejection So you have the sound field that's way out in front of you, and then it comes around, and in the back, there's this drop off of signal where you have all this rejection. So it's very important with cardioid microphones to make sure that your microphone is pointed in the right direction. In this case, this is a front address broadcast microphone, which means that it's pointing directly at me. The Fifine here is a side address. So instead of it pointing like this, you want it up like this, and you're talking to the side of it. So it's a couple different options. You need to understand that when you're buying a microphone, and what is the proper direction you need to aim this thing toward your mouth. Okay, so first thing, polar pattern test. You should hear my vocal both in volume and in frequency in detail change a lot as I go around the microphone. All right, so right here, this is the directly in front of the microphone. This is where you really want to be at to get all that nice rich sound. And then this is me over to the right of the microphone, or to your right of the microphone. This is me to the left. All right, so now let's do plosives. One of the things about the pod mic in particular is it has built-in pop filtering. Shure SM7B also has built-in pop filtering. Some microphones do have that, some don't. That's why you would get a pop filter. Now, unfortunately, the pod mic's pop filters are not that great. That's why I have an additional one, put on here. But let's do plosives real quick. So this is plosives with the pop filter in place. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. All right, and this is a plosives test without the pop filter installed. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. All right, now listen to the semblance as I start talking about a bunch of sounds and S's, things that, just gives you kind of a cringe kind of sound if it's super strong. Now, I said for dynamic microphones, semblance isn't so bad. So make sure that you're listening for the sounds and check out how I sound, because my semblance is somewhat strong. All right, and lastly, one of the great things about dynamic microphones that compared to condenser microphones is its ability to reject keyboards. Now, they're not perfect. They will still pick up keyboard sounds. Compared to a condenser, they pick up a lot less. So here we go. All right, so now let's go ahead and switch over to the Fifine K678 USB cardioid condenser microphone. Okay, so this is the Fifine K678. This is a condenser microphone. It is USB. Everything you want is in this. You see the gain knob here at the top and the volume control for your headphones, and for here at the bottom where you can listen to your PC playback, and also your zero latency microphone, which is great. And it has a mute button on the front here that I can turn on and off. And it gives you a little green indicator and a red indicator showing you, whether it's muted or not. So this microphone, again, I've set the gain to try to get it as close to the green and yellow in OBS, which is right around minus 20 dB. And I've basically got the gain almost turned all the way down. As you can see, it's literally, that is turned all the way off. So that kind of gives you an idea of this signal that this microphone has. It's a powered microphone. It has a lot of signal. You don't need a lot for this thing to produce a solid output. So in any case, let's talk about, some of these tests here. The first test that I wanted to do, again, is the polar pattern test. So I am currently addressing it from the proper side right now, and then I will go over here to the left, and you can hear me over here. And I'll go over to the other side, and I am right here. And then I am directly behind the microphone now, right here. Kind of give you an idea what it sounds like. What you should be able to tell by listening to the dynamic earlier and then this is that this one actually is a lot louder. And you don't lose a lot of detail. You still lose detail, but again, it doesn't reject the background as much as the dynamic did. All right, now let's do a plosives test. Again, let me pull off the pop filter. All right, so this is without the pop filter. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, and this is with the pop filter. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. All right, now this is a semblance test. Again, listen to the S's and the sounds that I am making because I have a pretty strong semblance in my voice. So it is somewhat strong, something that you really need to consider when you're listening and doing post-production, because you can actually get rid of semblance by using a little bit of EQ. And then some programs like Premiere actually has de-essers. Audition has a de-esser filter in it that is specific for that frequency range. All right, now this is the keyboard clicks. So we're going to, again, test a background rejection. Let me get the microphone aimed properly so that it is directly aimed. So here we go. All right, now lastly I want to do is just kind of show you the differences. I was talking earlier about being able to move around a little bit. You don't have to always be right into the microphone. You can actually be kind of away from the microphone a little bit. You don't need to be a lot. You still want to be as close as you can, but in the event that you don't want your microphone directly in your camera, you can lower this quite a bit and you still get a good amount of signal from this. But keep in mind that the objective for getting a good sound out of your microphone is to get as much signal to noise ratio as you can. The signal to noise ratio, the larger your ratio is, the less noises you're going to have in your microphone, which means that you need to have it as close as possible. But with condenser microphones, they are more forgiving because they are so sensitive, because they're powered. So you can have this out of your camera shot as long as it's not too far away. But you can tell I can move around a little bit, and you can tell that it still picks up my voice a lot better than the dynamic did. That's what's so good about this condenser microphones and condensers in general, is they are more forgiving, that you can move around. And gamers will do that a lot, is they'll move around, they'll aim their mouth toward the screen as they're talking and not directly at the microphone. And in the case of that, condenser microphones definitely help out a lot with keeping the vocal sounding really good. So some things you really need to consider when looking at purchasing your first microphone for your live stream. Okay, first of all, how bad is the room noise? What is your environment like that you're going to be doing your live stream in? Is it a treated room? Are you going to be putting up a bunch of acoustic panels like you see a lot of people doing? Are you in a room that's carpeted? Because carpet helps out a lot. Are you in a room with a lot of things that'll help absorb noise? This room actually is not too bad for reverb. I have a fully carpeted room. I've got, stuff everywhere. I've got beds. There are plenty of things that'll help absorb sound, absorb, those reflections that you get. But they're still there. So that's something you need to think about. Just look at your space, kind of go and you could actually stand in your room or stand where you're going to be using your mic and just shout real loud in your room and see if you can hear reverb. If you hear that, then you might need to do something to help treat your room a little better. Put some rugs on the floor if you have hardwood floors, for instance. Stuff like that will go a long way. But the best thing to do is to keep your microphone close. SNR, you want a high SNR, signal to noise ratio. The closer you are to your microphone, the higher your signal to noise ratio is going to be. And that'll definitely help with reverb. Okay, another thing to consider, are you a gamer? Okay, especially if you're an FPS gamer, shooter gamer, you're going to be clicking your keyboard a whole lot. Sometimes you might be clicking it pretty loud, especially your space bar where you're jumping, you're excited. You might be slamming your mouse around. You might be like me, and I use low sensitivity, so I'm picking my mouse up a lot and putting it back down on the mouse mat. Those are things you need to consider because those produce a lot of noise. And especially if you slam your keyboard or your mouse hard, then you might be sending those shocks from where you hit your desktop into your microphone, and it can be really loud, especially for a condenser. So if you're doing that a lot, you might want to think about going with a dynamic instead. Another thing you need to consider, and it kind of goes along with your space, is where will you be streaming? Are you going to be streaming where there's going to be other people in the room at all times? Are you going to be dual streaming with a partner, or are you going to be podcasting with multiple people? When you're doing situations like that, it's more preferred that you actually use a dynamic. That way you don't get a lot of bleed into your microphone from your other speakers or other people that may be live streaming. It's a key. That's why you see so many people doing these podcasts. They use dynamic microphones. Another thing to consider, what are you going to be using the microphone for? Is it going to be primarily just live streaming? Are you going to be doing voiceover work, that sort of thing? If you're going to be doing voiceover work, you should have a treated room, and you really should consider a condenser microphone, because you're just going to get all that rich detail that you're going to want in a high quality vocal. As opposed to live streaming and gaming, if you're live streaming on Twitch, your audio is getting so compressed anyway that a really expensive condenser microphone probably isn't going to do you a whole bunch of good, because a lot of that detail is going to get compressed and ruined by Twitch anyway. So that's just something else to think about. And Facebook is even worse. Another thing to consider, what is your budget? Budget is a big deal, especially for starting streamers. Now, there is a lot of budget-friendly options. The most expensive microphone that I showed you today is this Rode Pod mic at $100. Okay, you can get this toner microphone as part of a package for $59. It also includes a boom arm, an XLR cable, pop filters. You got it. This guy right here, the Samsung QTU, I think it retails, I think when I got it, it was $59, but I think right now it's about $69 or $79. But this is the great thing about this microphone, and why I recommend it to so many people starting out, is number one, it sounds fantastic for a microphone, and two, it's both USB and XLR. So if you know that one day you're going to expand into getting an audio interface or a mixer, but you can't afford it right now, this microphone you can use as USB. And then once you can afford to get that audio interface or mixer, then you can still use this microphone with that audio interface, which is really nice. And this microphone will go a long way. It's very durable, works great, zero latency monitoring, headphone output. When you're using this thing for USB, you get a lot of functionality with it, which is really good. The only issue is this is not really a broadcaster microphone. It's a live mic designed to be held by your hand. You can put it into a boom arm, and it works fine. But a lot of people that are live streaming are looking for a broadcast style microphone that looks like this pod mic or looks like this toner mic here. These are all broadcast style microphones, whereas this is more for live stuff. When you're walking around, you're holding it in your hand, you're doing interviews, you can, put it to somebody else while they're talking, that sort of thing. But still, for a lot of people who are budget conscious and are looking for a good microphone to stretch them out a long way, this is a really good option. There's nothing wrong with this microphone at all. All right, the last thing that I want to talk about, and this is something that's relatively new that you need to consider, is noise suppression. Are you going to use noise suppression? Now, a year ago, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even considered this. But with the recent advent of AI-based noise suppressions, RTX voice, clear edge, RN noise, crisp, there's all kinds of AI-based noise suppressions out there that are really good at rejecting noise that is going into your microphone that is not your vocal. These AI-based noise suppressions are designed to detect your vocal and to strip everything else out of it. So it's really good for getting rid of things like keyboard clicks, background noise, that sort of thing. AC noise may kick up. It'll even get rid of things like a door slam or something like that. They are really amazing. Two of the best ones out there, I think, are the RTX voice, which you can get for free now. If you have an NVIDIA video card, you can use the GPU to do hardware rendering or acceleration to do the noise suppression. Or if you have RN noise is another really good option. It's now part of OBS 26. It comes standard in the noise suppression filter, so you'll see that. Definitely recommend both of them. And before, I was going to say, generally speaking, I wouldn't even recommend a condenser microphone for live streamers because of the fact that most of them are gaming and you're going to be doing a lot of keyboard clicks and stuff like that. But with the advent of noise suppression, this AI-based noise suppression like RTX Voice, they really do a good job at getting rid of that without ruining your vocal. That was the big issue with them before. The old noise suppression in OBS, it just destroyed the sound of your vocal. It took out any detail. It had this digitized sound to it. And you know, it was just something that wasn't pleasant to listen to. And I only recommended using noise suppression before as a last resort. But nowadays, I recommend using the new noise suppressions for pretty much anybody. I use it now. My last videos that I've done within, I would say, last month or two, they've all had this AI-based noise suppression added. It really helps in post-production because then I don't have to go and run a bunch of noise reduction in post-processing to get rid of noise. It's already being done, so it's great, and it does not hurt the vocal a great deal. There is some degradation in the vocal, but when you don't have anything loud going on, you hardly even notice it. Now, if you have something really loud going on in the background, then the noise reduction really kicks in, the noise suppression really kicks in, and at that point you will start to hear a great deal of vocal, I would say vocal destruction. You're just going to hear that digitized sound. You're going to lose a lot of detail out of it. But it really takes a lot for that to happen, like a vacuum cleaner or something. That's the kind of sound I'm talking about. So that's something to consider. Noise suppression. They're free. RTX Voice is free. RN Noise is free. There's even a RN Noise type VST plugin that I personally use that I think is fantastic. So yeah, I mean, that's something that's great. So that really does make me reconsider what is the best microphone for live streaming. It could be a condenser microphone because they are now, you know, with the noise suppression that we have out there, they just, you know, they're just good options. So it's really, you know, what's available on the market and how are you going to be using it? Generally speaking, for most people, I do recommend dynamic microphones for live streaming. Just purely because they just sound really good. They're not, generally speaking, they're warm sounding. They don't have a lot of detail, but you can actually add, say, a high shelf in your EQ to bring up some of those highs and you get detail in it. And you could do a little boost of low end if you really want that broadcast sound, add compression to it, and you'll have that good radio voice with a dynamic microphone, which is what most live streamers are looking for anyway. For vocal, you know, if you're doing vocal voiceovers, that sort of thing, and definitely you want a condenser. But the problem with that is you need to be in a treated room because you don't want to use noise suppression because you want your voiceover and your clients want a nice raw signal. They'll typically tell you what they want, whether or not they'll tell you what level they want it at. They'll tell you whether or not they want it compressed or uncompressed. You know, so those are things that you need to think about. And, you know, condensers are generally what voiceover artists are using. You rarely see a voiceover artist using a dynamic microphone. Now, in some cases they may, but generally speaking, you just want all that detail. And that's what a condenser is going to give you. So those are what you need to consider. But I would generally say for most live streamers, eventually you're going to probably want a dynamic microphone because it's just going to give you just all that rejection of the background noise without needing noise suppression. Now, generally speaking, I run noise suppression now anyway, because unfortunately it still does pick up keyboards, but I just love my Rode Pod mic. I'm not promoting the Pod mic right now. You can't even buy them anyway. They're all sold out. But I love this microphone. For $100, I think it is probably the best microphone you're going to find within, you know, even up to $200. I just don't know of a microphone that really compares to the Pod mic when it comes to just what it is and what it does for you. It's just a fantastic microphone. But, you know, you may want a condenser microphone, and that's fine. Just keep those things that we've talked about in mind when you're looking at purchasing one. Okay. Other than that, that is it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate you hanging out. If you have any questions about this video, if you want to comment, feel free to comment below. Hit me up on the Discord. I have my Discord. You can select the link in the description along with my other socials. I'm on Twitter. I have a Twitch channel where I stream there. And I'll also provide a link to where I'm streaming currently every other Monday. I stream on stackup.org. Okay, I'm part of their stream team, and it's a great organization. If you're looking to get involved and do some volunteer time, it is a great organization that supports military, active duty, veterans. And what they do is they typically package game kits together and get consoles and games out to those that are, have served. Whether you're in the United States, you're part of NATO, they do it all. So they go and they'll visit different commands. They'll go and ship these out. They'll actually take and do trips throughout the year to game cons, and they'll bring veterans out with them to those free of charge. Also, there's another part of it that I think is vitally important right now, and that is the STOP organization, the Stack Up Overwatch program. STOP is there for people who are suffering from mental issues like depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, or they're really thinking about hurting themselves or possibly even killing themselves, which is something that, we definitely do not want. So there is somebody there 24/7 that is willing to listen to you, and they're certified. Okay. They are qualified, certified professionals that are there, that are volunteering their time to go and just be a listening ear and to get you the help that you need. So I will provide a link down below. I would love for you to go check out StackUp's website at stackup.org. You can check out their Twitch channel at twitch.tv/stackup.org, all spelled out. We'd love to see you come by. Again, I stream there every other Monday, the first and third Monday of the month from 0800 to 1100 Eastern. Okay, guys, thank you for the video. I hope you have a great rest of your week. We will see you later. Bye-bye.